Okay. There we go. Okay, let me see something here. There we go. That's looking good. Now let me see. I see Candy and Jackie and Tess. Hello, Crystal. Okay. Let me see if this works.
I'm going to go ahead and post that link if you want to. Will you post that link so that they can start signing in?
Yes, ma'am. I will.
Oh, actually, I was talking to Miss Beaker. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I had posted it up in the top of the chat before everybody signed in, so nobody can see it except me.
Okay.
Also wanted to put the Google Slides back channel link in there that they could copy and paste if they'd like to. Hello.
All right, I'm going to ask a dumb question. What link am I putting in?
Oh, that's right. You can't copy and paste it yet because you can't see it. I'll do it this time. You might have to just do it again later. So I'm gonna paste a link in here. If you all could just follow this link and sign in. I guess there have been some people who may have gotten missed in previous meets because they didn't actually say hello in the chat, and so we want to make sure that we've got everybody who's in attendance. But as comments go on and it moves up, you might need to post it again later on. Now you can see it, right?
Yes, I can see it.
All right. It's 1. We only have 12 people. Should I go ahead and start?
Yep.
All right.
Hey, Kat. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
I just wanted to, before we got started, just congratulate all our Teachers of the Year and Teachers. Teachers of the Year and Teacher Assistants of the Year. Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to post the link in the chat that you can copy and paste to use the back channel for the slides presentation that I'm going to start in just a minute. So if you look in the chat where it says slides.app.google, if you copy and paste that into a new tab, it will take you to a screen where you can communicate with the presenter, either with your name or you can also do it anonymously. And so those of you who are just coming in, there's a link up in the chat for you to click and sign in, please. Let me go ahead and start presenting now. Hello, everyone. Okay, a Chrome tab. Do you see the presenter tool, Ms. Beaker?
I see the slides.
Just the slides, okay. All right.
The slide app is back.
You can see this?
Yes.
All right, so what have I done wrong now? Let me try this again. I thought we had this figured out.
Well, we had to open it in a separate one, right?
Yeah, I did. Let me stop presenting and do it first.
They need a link too. Oh, there it is.
Yeah. All right. Let me try this again. I'm going to present first. and get that audience tools open. Continue recent. Okay. All right, now hopefully doing it that way, I'll be able to only present the tab that they need to see from tab. Okay, now is it right? Now can you just see the slides? What about
I
now?
just got the slides.
And still?
Mhm.
On your side, you can just see the slides?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, thank you all for coming again this week. Ms. Beaker is going to be checking the chat, but you can also copy the link that's at the top of the slides into a new tab, and you can communicate with the presenter as well, either with your name or anonymously. So some housekeeping for today is to please sign in. The link is posted in the comments. Some people, I guess, are not actually saying hello in the chat sometimes, and so maybe getting missed, and we don't want to miss anyone. So if you could use that link and sign in on the document that it links to, it will help us keep track. And then there's also this presenter back channel that I was talking about a moment ago, this slides .app.google, and then it's QXOUB. You can use that. And then there was a question last time about PD credit for the TAs, and Ms. Beaker will contact you about questions regarding that PD credit. So when we first started, we had a challenge to sign into Flipgrid and introduce yourself and talk about something interesting about yourself. And Ms. Hodges shared with us that she can still juggle, and she had learned it, I believe, in basketball camp at ODU. And so I asked her to share that with us, and she did. So I'm going to try to show you that video. And we've struggled with videos before, but I think we may have figured it out this time. So bear with me a minute. Okay, now I've got to present again. Present now, a new tab. This one. Okay. Can you see the video?
She's coming up.
All right. So here is Miss Hodges' juggling talent. Yay! Good job. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay. Now I've got to present again, another tab. Go back here. Okay. The next thing, the challenge this week was to do the Go Ape, and a couple of you did that. So I wanted to share that with you. This is from last week's meet, and there were a couple slides, and I wanted to show how that will work. I got to start over again. Okay, where is it? It's this one. There it is. Can you see the Go Ape slides?
Not yet.
No?
No.
Okay.
Did you present?
I thought I did. Let me try it again. Oh, here it is. Okay. I think I've got it now.
Here we go.
Can you see it now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Oops, I did the wrong thing. Oops. I meant to hit this one. So a couple of people did go grab a slide and add for us. So Ms. Beaker helped with an idea about the word nerd. And here's another one. This was from Ms. Warden. And then in the practice, there were a couple as well, one from Ms. Derby and another one from Ms. Warden. So these slides, we'll just add to them each week. And at the end, I'll put them all together in a document that we can share and then have another resource to help you with ideas for application practice and exploration. Okay, I'm gonna close that. All right, I gotta come back to this tab now. Wait for, okay, can you see that one again? I'm back, okay. All right, I keep forgetting to, thank you. Okay, so Ms. Hodges, I see your comment that you love that feature. You don't see a separate link to sign in. Okay, all right, so we might need to repost that link in the chat because Ms. Williams can't see it. She doesn't see it. Okay. All right, do you see the chapter 1 slide for peer tutoring?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't hear much of anything right now. I don't think I need to put headphones on. I think I can hear them if they're talking. But the peer tutoring had a 0.5 effect size, which, so it was a good one. And the example from the book was amazing. The movie he referred to was another one that I had not seen before, Finding Forrester. I'm going to have to go watch it, but it seemed interesting about how these two very different people ended up in a peer tutoring relationship that really helped the young man excel, but also helped Sean Connery's character kind of rejoin life. And then the example in the book with the teacher Barbara had huge growth from her example of the international peer tutoring. And I went on Google Earth and just made a presentation back and forth because it was amazing to me how that worked. So I'm going to try to show you that. Do you see it, Ms. Beaker? Okay. So Miss Barbara was in Indianapolis, Indiana, and had peer tutoring sessions. In the beginning, she had them live, so they did it synchronously, but later on they ended up having to, due to changes in schedules, go to asynchronous communication, but they still, that far apart from each other in the world, were able to continue the peer tutoring and growth. Go back to the slides. So I just wondered if any of you guys, anything having to do with Barbara really struck you as something that might help you, or any other ideas? Let's check that. How do you get this link to share with participants?
Tess, it kind of reminded me of us reading with our students remotely during COVID.
Yeah.
Wanted to do those one-on-one virtual lessons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great to be able to do that. Thank you. I'm glad I could hear you. For a minute there, I thought I wasn't able to hear anybody.
I know, Charlie Brown, right? Charlie Brown. But I love the idea of connecting with a native language user as you're trying to learn a language. I thought that was very, very clever. But, you know, of course, for me, everything goes back to reading. And I read with one of my students a lot. I started with one of my neighbor's children just to sign into the platform and see how to do it. But we've learned a lot about being able to connect. And we were doing that as teaching, but I guess you could also just have buddies. I know Amy Monroe at Central she was having read with somebody. So she was doing like buddy reading as part of one of her groups. And so I thought that was really clever and well done. She had sent me a video link of that. So that's something that we could encourage children to do as well.
Thank you. I see your message about how do you get the link to share with the participants. It should be in the comments, in the chat section, the link. If you copy and paste it in a new tab, it should be able to be shared. Okay, thank you.
Well, I was just meaning if I was going to do that, how would I get a link to share with other people? I don't know how to literally do that. I'm there and I asked the question. I don't know how to do it myself.
Oh, like if you were going to present to someone else?
Correct.
Okay, I can show you how to do that.
Logistics. We can do that later.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. When I was reading this section, I was thinking about Genius Hour. I had wanted to try a Genius Hour, but with first graders, I thought it might be a little hard, tricky. So I thought about maybe when we did the beginning where we check out their interests, do the interest survey, if maybe we buddied with a class, maybe a fourth or fifth grade class, and found kids in fourth or fifth grade that had a similar interest to one of my first graders and try to buddy them up that way. But you could also do something like that using technology from far away, not just even in the same school, but different schools. And I also thought it would be a great idea. And if any of you middle school teachers are willing to let me do it or join with me and do it, I'd like to do the buddy reading next year from elementary to middle school. So you can just send me a message if you're interested. I'd appreciate it.
I included some surveys, interest surveys for kindergarten even. They're in the resources for this week's chat.
Okay.
But I thought it would be nice if you had interest surveys and student surveys that you could start with at the beginning of the year to get to know your children a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And we had one time, I think when I was at Jarvisburg, my children had written a story and we connected with the art teacher at the middle school and they did the illustrations for their books. It was really neat, collaborative project.
That's a great idea. So the things for us to learn were, the first one was to match peers intentionally. And that kind of made me chuckle to myself because my first year teaching, I was teaching third grade math, and there was this one little boy I had that I didn't really know what to do with. He was so far behind in math. And so I just put him next to one of the students who was really great with math. And that little boy kept complaining that the other little boy was copying him. And I was trying to explain that I just want you to, try to help him see a different way to see that. And it ended up working out. The little boy who I was worried about did pass his math EOG that year, but I didn't really think as much about how it felt to the higher little boy in math. So that was probably a mistake on my part with matching peers.
Diane put something out that would be good for the group. It challenges the students who don't want to work with others, or those who only want to work with one or two others and are stubborn about it.
Yeah, that's true. And I'd like this idea of matching peers intentionally for certain things, but there are also times in my classroom where I use Class Dojo's random assigning partners feature, because I do have kids who will try to have the same partners every time and never want to get to know anybody else in the classroom. And so I have used that random pairing as well. But I think he means for a specific purpose, to build trust and the safety and honest feedback between partners who can get to know each other and work together on something specific over a period of time, maybe. The peer tutoring for practice was another mistake when I read that part. I was thinking about the two little boys in math. It wasn't, I didn't use that right. So I was kind of like using the higher boy to be a teacher for the older boy instead of peer practice. And then the tutors must be trained. And this goes back to my thought was time and taking the time in the beginning to train them how to do it. And that did happen a little bit this year with for me anyway, with the Lucy Calkins Writers Workshop units, because there is a lot of peer evaluation in that. So it was worth it. And I think it will be worth it in the long run to train them at the beginning of the year how to be peer tutors effectively. So did any of you have something you'd like to share or something you thought of with those three?
I have something to say. I was thinking how neat it would be if we had like ninth graders come back to the middle school and, peer tutor eighth graders so they feel more comfortable when they're going into ninth grade and that whole high school experience. So maybe bridge the gap between the middle and the high school and the elementary fifth graders to the middle school. So I was even thinking how interesting that would be.
And this is Diane. One of my thoughts that I put in my questions was to utilize our beta students at both middle schools and at both high schools. I mean, those beta students, they need hours, they need community service hours, they need school hours, and they often do stuff that I don't know, I wouldn't say is meaningless, but it could be more meaningful and given back to their peers and our school communities.
Those are great ideas. It made me think about when like kindergarten might go on a field trip, or preschoolers would go on a field trip to kindergarten, but it's something similar to that with older children, but they don't have to get on a bus and physically go there, especially now that we have the situation going on in the world that we do right now.
From the reading, the one word that kept coming to me was model.
Mm-hmm.
Model. A lot of that has to be done at the beginning of the year for these things to set in place.
Mm-hmm. And we're good at doing that now with Daily 5. I think that's something that's just something I do all the time because I know how to do it and I know the value of it in the long run. But I have to add the other things as well till they become habits like that too. The second three parts were letting the students be in control. And that might be hard for some teachers, letting go and letting the students have control to make the decisions and guide the direction of where they're going. And then the teacher, a teacher in my old school district, she made me chuckle. She said that she likes to do this kind of learning with her students. She was a middle school teacher, and her job is just to walk around with her coffee looking pretty. She made me chuckle. But she obviously did not just walk around with her coffee looking pretty. She was monitoring them and doing all these things to make sure that everyone stayed on track with what they were supposed to be doing. And then the last part was about being able to do it anywhere. That was the amazing part of the example from Barbara in the book about how far apart they actually were. And I was working with a student this week in remote reading, and we were reading a book about an elephant orphanage in Sri Lanka. And so I pulled up that Google Earth and rotated the Earth around so that he could see how far apart, like we're on opposite sides of the world from that. But it's interesting to think that you could actually communicate with people there in real time for learning, as well as not just to visit the orphanage, the elephant orphanage, which was really cute. Okay. What did you guys think about any of that? Nothing in the chat? Okay. I added this one at the last minute because I was thinking about the question about what quadrant Barbara's example was in. And I read a few of the reflections, and most of us agree that it was D, because they were doing all of these things on the depth of knowledge side. And then they were applying the language to conversational language so that it wasn't always predictable, but it was both predictable and unpredictable. Predictable in that you know that the other person is going to speak to you in a language that's not their native language, and you're going to evaluate that, but also unpredictable because you don't really know what they're going to say. It made me laugh and think about the comedian Ismo. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's a Finnish comedian, and his bits are all about colloquialisms in English and foul language that is used in so many different ways, and it's hilarious. You have to look it up. But he could have learned more of those things online. And what peer tutors might you be able to leverage out? We kind of already talked about that. I was thinking about what I could do with my kids next year, and the making sure that they're mutually beneficial is something that I guess I will just have to learn as I go.
Collaborating on a whole new level.
Mm-hmm. And then these were some of the apps over on the left that you could use for synchronous communication. And then over here on the right were some of the ones that he mentioned. Except for Flipgrid. I added Flipgrid in there because I think it would be good for the asynchronous as well. Are there any other apps that you guys know about that would be good for this that are not on here? I had never heard of some of them, like Recap and Boxer. I'd never heard of.
Emily said Seesaw.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too. I do know about Seesaw. Okay. All right. So chapter 8 was about concept mapping. This one was really interesting to me because I came from a district that had adopted learning focused, and it was all about graphic organizers, graphic organizers, graphic organizers, and I was dreaming about graphic organizers in my sleep. But apparently concept mapping, not that graphic organizers are bad, they have their purpose, but I thought it was interesting what he said about offering choices, and it also made me think about math. And we offer so many different strategies for kids to try and learn in math so that they can find a way that works for them, and it makes sense for the graphic organizers as well, or how you think about something. And it has an even bigger effect size than the peer tutoring if it's done properly. But I brought this slide back in, the bee in the brain that he talked about. To get the bee in your brain, that a strategy and a tool are not the same thing. And a graphic organizer is not a strategy, but a tool that you can use with a strategy to accomplish a goal. And then his thought was to give students choice, or better yet, let them create their own graphic organizer with a concept map. And I saw this tweet that he put during the remote learning time when it actually popped up, and it was interesting. So I added it in here, and I'm going to try to get to where I can show that for some of you. Okay. Are you good? Can you see it? All right. And I had to plug this in to keep it from echoing, so I'm going to try it. Let us know in the chat if you cannot hear it, please.
Hey guys, wanted to talk about easy ways to do concept mapping with kids. So concept mapping is awesome to get kids to organize their thinking, organize ideas in a way that makes sense to them. So one of the things that we decided to work on was one of the next generation science standards. It has to do with structures and functions. We talked about structures and functions, right, Shar? And so remember, like a structure is a thing and what it is. A function is what it is what it does. Very good. So we decided I did a penguin right here, and I wrote down all the structures and the functions of a penguin, right? So one of the structures of a penguin is like the beak, right? And what's the function of the beak, Charlotte?
Hunting and eating and poking.
Very good. And so Charlotte said she wanted to do a horse, and so she wrote down all of the structures and functions that you might find on a horse. So what are some of the structures and functions you'd find on a horse?
All of them?
Just give me one.
Okay. Hooves for walking, and not just for walking, for like running, skipping, trotting, anything.
Exactly, because a different structure can have, one structure can have lots of different functions, right? Exactly. And so figure out ways to do concept mapping with kids. You can do it with a tool like Poplet. You can do it with pen and paper, poster board, whatever it may be. What's important is that we get kids organizing their own thinking using concept maps. More to come.
So I thought this year I might try. I don't reuse anchor charts, and I don't use ones that are pre-made. I remake them every year as I'm teaching those things. And so I thought this year I might try that. Try doing concept mapping with anchor charts and see how it goes. And then that would be a model for the kids so that they could try it themselves as well. But he said that doing that concept mapping puts the kids in the driver's seat, but sometimes they're going to bump into each other and hit a wall and whatever. So they're still going to need lots of practice, just like I will. Yeah, there are lots of there are actually lots of different things in the Google Classroom for this week, resources for you. Does any of you have anything you wanted to add to that? I had seen the movie he talked about in this chapter, Pleasantville, and he said that using the concept mapping makes concepts come to life in living color. And that's what happened in the movie. Everything was very flat and black and white. But as the two teenagers from modern time introduced some ideas that were pretty risque in that time, people started blooming and seeing things they didn't see before. And that could happen with kids as well when they're seeing the relationships between things by using these concept maps. It almost reminded me of a bubble map, but even more than a bubble map, how things are related to each other, and they could go further and see some relationships that you don't see right in the beginning or right up front. Miss Hodges, I see your comment about, oh, sorry. So I was talking all that time and they couldn't hear me, huh? Sorry about that. I was saying, what was I saying? About the relationships that the people in the movie started seeing things in color when they couldn't see things before as the movie went on. But I was saying that as kids get more familiar with using concept mapping, that they may be able to extend and add on
relationships that they hadn't thought of before, or make connections between things they hadn't thought before might be related to one another in some way. And I don't know if they could hear me when I said that there are a lot of resources for this week in the Google Classroom. All right, so from this chapter, the first what to learns were the graphic organizers are a tool, not a strategy, and we've already talked about that a little bit. It was related to that being the brain from the first couple of chapters. So if you're going to use graphic organizers, you might want to offer more than one choice for them to use. And the question was, which will help develop their skills? They don't all think the same way. We don't all think the same way. So one may work better for one kid and another kid in another way. And that the concept maps improve cognition and put students in control versus a graphic organizer where they're filling in their thoughts into predetermined boxes or whatever. With the concept map, they get to decide where it goes and what the connections are. And it's literally making connections between neurons with new information, which we know they have to hook new learning onto the schema that they already have. So any comments about that? It's hard to hear Candy. Miss Baker, she said it's hard to hear you.
I told them they couldn't hear you as well.
It was me they couldn't hear.
You.
Yeah, because I had the thing still plugged in, didn't realize it. Okay. But in my comment thing here, Miss Derby said it's really hard to hear you. I guess you sound low. Maybe?
Maybe so.
Speak up. All right, so the second part of this chapter was leveraging technologies to provide more freedom in their concept mapping and using that to try to get them to that quadrant D in their thinking. And then the 3-step process I thought was interesting too, because even though he talks about it being the steps main idea, key concepts, and connections, that sounds like nonfiction, but it can be used for fiction books as well. There are lots of relationships that you can see and make in fiction books as well. Kids Thinking Championship. Okay, so any of you have ideas that you'd like to share about the concept mapping? I think it's going to be a powerful one that I'm really looking forward to trying a lot more this year.
I think, Tess, it's Christy. I think the biggest thing with concept mapping, because I was a graphic organizer gal for a really long time, but I think the biggest thing with concept mapping is it's going to require a tremendous amount of patience on the part of both the teacher and the student. Mm-hmm. It's very messy when it's first done, and it reminded me of one of the teachers that Kieschnick talked about earlier, where she said that it didn't go really well. So that's going to be, I think, our tendency is to think when we do concept mapping the first time, that it's going to just be this beautiful, clean product, and it's going to be so messy. And I would just encourage people not to throw the towel in and learn from what didn't look well and what didn't go well. But it's going to take, so when he talked about those, the 3-step process, you won't model it one time and be done. You'll probably model it almost to where you feel like, oh my gosh, surely they're getting it. So I would just reiterate the fact that it is a higher level of thinking, and with that, sometimes messiness and creativity kind of overlap. And so I would just encourage people to be patient.
Another thing, can you hear me now?
No.
Another thing is this on the student side.
Getting some feedback.
Never mind. On the student side, they have a hard time sometimes starting with a graphic organizer because they want to put a right answer.
Mm.
So being that messy, we have to teach them to be messy and to be, it's okay. And that, this is just a process.
Yeah, sometimes, especially in my grade level, I'll ask the kids a question about the book, and it's a thinking question. It's a what do you think kind of question, and they try to give an answer from the book because they think they need to give the right answer from the book. And I have to say it over and over again. No, what do you think after reading this part of the book? And eventually they'll come around and give it a try, but it takes a while.
Well, and there's also, oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
There's also safety in a graphic organizer that is not present in a concept map. So there's going to be some students that are sitting in your classroom that have been in former classrooms where they've been given the graphic organizer and the thinking is scaffolded for them. So when they're staring at a blank piece of paper, fear sets in, and then so do behaviors that, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get started, even if you model it. So there, it can look messy is the only word that I can think of at the beginning of this process, but it's worth it.
I was thinking that I might be able to use technology to record myself doing some examples of a bunch of different kinds and have them be able to watch those when they're in a small group doing something similar to give them an example or a model to go by. But there's only one of me, so it would be hard to do that for a bunch of different groups at the same time. The other thing that I thought I could use that I've done in the past that I could change and put it in the children's hands is culture. Culture's just such a hard concept for them to grasp. And so I would start the year with that word in a bubble on the board. And as the year went on, every time we read a book or did something that had some kind of cultural connection, I would add an arm to that. And then that, so like if it was food, for example, then that bubble would get a bunch of arms as well, as we learned about that in different places around the world. So my map grew and grew on the board all year long as we added things, but it was me doing it and them looking at it instead of putting it in their hands to have them do it and make those connections. Mm-hmm. So I might try to figure out a way to do that digitally and give them some ownership of it.
Christy said she liked the idea of recording because the students can revisit as much as they need for scaffolding.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm having had to do that over this time of remote learning. I got more comfortable and familiar with doing it. So I think it's something that could help me even in the classroom. So I'm definitely going to keep doing that, even when we're here in person. These are the apps that he mentioned would be good for the concept mapping. Poplet, and I'm not familiar with that one. I have used Prezi. I do like that one because it made me, that's where actually I got the idea for my maps that I make for culture on the board throughout the year. But not on, I didn't do it electronically, but I have seen it. It's really cool. And then Google Slides. And this one I'm not familiar with, the bubble. I'm not sure what that is. Do any of you have any, are any of you familiar with the bubble.us?
I've used Bubble before.
You have?
Mm-hmm.
How does it work?
Just you put a main topic in a bubble, and then you can just add bubbles that connect them.
So it's kind of like bubble maps.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, we're getting close to the end now. So the wows, what was something that was really eye-opening for you or something that you are going to go and try?
Nothing on the chat.
I truly just enjoyed learning more about the peer tutoring and learning how to bridge the gap and coming up with ideas. That's what I took away.
Yeah, I did. I thought that was a great one too. I really am interested in finding a middle school teacher to do buddy reading with my class next year.
Yes, I think that's a good idea too.
Same for me. I liked how their spin on how do you pair the students instead of the high with the low, find their commonalities and what they have both have interest in. That way they're not intimidated by each other. I thought that was very informative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't make oops, I went ahead by accident. Let me go back.
And Diane had a good comment, and I just lost it, about training peer tutors.
Training peer tutors, what was it? I can go back.
He talked about the importance of having to train your tutors before pairing them up, and I think that's a step I just assumed that they could do and that they would do, but maybe in hindsight I should have kind of gotten them my tutors together in a small group and did some training before we implemented it.
It would be a good try it with a buddy. You model it, you try it. What does it look like? What doesn't it look like? It's just daily 5. And Kim said that training is super important, but easily gets left out.
Yeah.
I know. Oh, and fishbowl too.
What's fishbowl?
Fishbowl is when you have one inner group sitting facing outside, and then you have a group on the outside, and then they talk to each other. And I believe the outside group rotates. Am I right, Christy?
So in the there's various versions of it, but the idea is they call it a fish bowl because it's like you observing the fish within the tank itself. And so typically the fish bowl is used to, you have participants in the middle who you have trained, and the outside participants watch in action what's going on so that they can walk away with a better sense of what you're expecting them to be able to do.
Then our final thing for today, and I'll post this, I'll post these slides in the Google Classroom for this week. So you can just go in there and use the link for the Go 8 link and give us a slide for this week's topics that you can use to apply, practice, or explore. And in the end, then I'll just merge all that together for one document that we can use to help each other. That's all I have. I'm sorry?
No more in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming. Finishing a little early today. Can they still hear me? Okay. So I'm going to stop presenting. Okay. Thank you. Boy, that chat's going crazy. Thank you all for coming.